Don't give me a jerk-off hand job. Welcome to You Guys Podcast. I'm Rob, this is Liam, and this week we watched 1989's Gleaming the Cube, starring Christian Slater. Slater plays Brian Kelly, a high school student who in his spare time likes to gleam the cube with his friends in empty swimming pools. Well, that is until his adopted brother Vin is murdered by Rain from Big Trouble in Little China. Then Brian goes on a mission to find out who killed Vin and why. How does he do that, you might ask? And with a hint of luck, some domestic terrorism, a massive disregard of Newton's law of gravity, and a whole hell of a lot of Gleaming the Cube. Now, before we get started, Liam, I looked up Gleaming the Cube, and I have found some interesting explanations of the phrase. Can I read some out to you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not buying any of them. Go for it. Go for it.
Again, now bear in mind, none of these may actually be the real explanation.
Is this literally or metaphorically speaking what it means to gleam a cube, whether it be inside a cube, on the outside of a cube? I have no idea. But
well, get ready.
Go for it.
Get ready. Right, so to push yourself to dangerous new limits, hence being outside of the cube and able to polish it, creating the gleaming effect. Okay.
Wait, who's saying this? Where's this coming from?
This was by, these are Urban Dictionary.
Urban Dictionary. In fairness, though, for me, obviously the name has become a big thing. I'd argue that the name is more famous than the film now, like the whole Gleaming the Cube thing. But when I was younger, it just sounded perfectly fine. And I think it's because I just accepted it as a skating term, because now obviously you check it out, you check it out online, don't you? Gleaming the Cube, and nobody's got a proper answer. When I was younger, I just assumed that there was an answer and it was a skateboarding term, and I was like, oh, it's just pushing yourself to the limits. It's only as I've got older, I was like, wait a minute, did somebody just make this fucker up?
I think they did for the film. Right, so a couple more, right, because again, they get better.
Yeah.
As you just said, is an American English skateboarding slang for performing well. What is known in automobile slang as firing on all cylinders, in tennis slang as being in the zone, or perhaps in martial arts as having mind, body, and soul in harmony. Right.
I'm going to put this literally on my CV. It's like, dude, you have no idea. I absolutely gleam the cube when I'm in the office.
Well, I might have to say you might want to hold up on putting that on any important document after I read the next one to you.
Oh, no.
Gleaming the Cube, when a girl rubs her pussy on a bald man's head.
Oh, for God's sake, I don't think they were going for that with the movie.
Last night, that girl was gleaming the cube and my stubble got her off.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
All right, hang on. What else have we got here? Gleaming the Cube, intense masturbation aimed in the direction of a Nintendo GameCube that has Beyblade stickers on it.
This is really going for it now. Jesus Christ. So where did it come from? Oh, sorry, go for it.
Just one more. So this one was actually, I'm guessing by people that reviewed the movie, to fail so badly that there is brilliance in the failure, a phrase coined by cinema abattoir bloggers in reference to a 1989 movie starring Christian Slater. I can't believe how thoroughly this movie is gleaming the cube.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, that there is no solid answer to this. One of our listeners, Carl Lind, he actually sent in the reference, the closest thing you can get to an actual answer.
That was the next one on my list, yeah.
Well, Gary Scott Davis asked Neil Blender in an interview in a December 1983 issue of Thrash magazine, have you ever gleamed inside a cube? That's the closest thing they've got to it, but that's no clearer than the title of this film. Some just skated to, it's like, dude, have you ever gleamed inside a cube? If there was another sentence after that in the interview, what the fuck does that mean? We might be onto something. We don't even know, and maybe somebody has the initial issue. We don't even know what his answer was. He asked him, have you ever gleamed inside a cube? Yes, maybe, I don't know. It's a strange title, but like I said, in terms of the legacy of this movie, that's what everyone remembers. That and maybe Christian Slater's hair. But, I think, if this film was called, and there are a bunch of alternative titles, which we'll get to in the alternative title section, but there are a lot of generic alternatives to this film. If this was just called Skater Boy, I don't think it'd be remembered in the same way.
No, I mean, Gleaming the Cube, the title is what has pushed it to, I guess, cult. I would like to say cult status for just the title.
100%.
But what was it you said then? His hair, right?
Yeah.
I had that written down. His hair is fantastic. Even when they put his hair on I'm guessing a helmet on a stunt double.
I tell you, right, that was an important, but it's an underappreciated skill in these films, because we've gone back and watched a few films recently where the stunt double work is a little And it's one of the issues, especially when you go back and watch these films and you're suddenly watching them in HD and 4K. It's just more egregious than it was on watching it on like standard def or, you know, VHS, whatever, back in the day. Obviously, when you're seeing the bits and there's some other dude doing the skateboarding tricks, it doesn't necessarily look all that much like Christian Slater, but they get away with so much because they get the fucking hair right. It's amazing how often the wigs ruin it before you even get to their face. Like, well, that's just not their Barnett. Like, the guy's hair at least does look like Christian Slater's hair.
I do love, absolutely, but it also looks like it's been given the Pat Butcher treatment by just like it's inflated because they've got to put it over the helmet that he's on.
Oh yeah, maybe that's the case.
Fantastic. But what I do love as well, right? You said that, and I for the skateboard and stunt doubles, they look spot on. Mm-hmm. But then you get the stunt double of the copper in the car at the end, who is clearly a completely different guy and a different race.
Yeah, well, there's a few problems with this, right? And in many respects, it's an odd film. Like, one of the odd things is, like, when I was looking at, like, how this film did, and it was it was a flop, because it made 2.7, but it was off a $10 million budget. Now, this is $10 million in 1989. Yep. It's not a massive budget, but it's a decent budget. And when you're watching this film, for the vast majority of it, your first question is, where the fuck did this money go? Because it's not an expensive looking film. Like, it's not poorly directed or anything, but just beyond skateboarding a little bit, nothing much happens. They basically saved all the money for the chase sequence at the end of the film. That's where 90% of the budget goes. So it's a strange film in many respects, because for the most part, it's a very small movie until that, final 15, 20 minutes, when it suddenly becomes a very different movie. And I actually think that final sequence has dictated how the movie is talked about, because obviously part of it's the title, and everyone remembers, Christian Slater looking, and that's an important part of this film again. Christian Slater is cool as shit in this film, and obviously he does have a skateboard. But for 90% of this film, the skateboarding feels incidental as fuck. I would make the argument that this, for the most part, isn't a skateboarding film. It's an amateur sleuth movie with a kid who just happens to have a skateboard with him.
Well, that's what I mean. That's what I said in my intro. He does all this sleuthing by luck, most of it. Like, it's ridiculous how he falls upon everything. But I wanted to say, as you said, with the end of this movie, and for everything else, when he's trying to find out who killed his brother and why, I was so surprised that was Rain from Big Trouble in Little China, Peter Kwong. Actually, this was after Big Trouble in Little China as well, which is weird. What's the bad guy's motivation?
It's a complete mystery, and it was odd because I hadn't seen, and I think it was the same as you. I hadn't seen this film for many years, decades. And I always try and kind of remember the movie before I go back and rewatch it. Like, what's my memory of this film? And I was like, well, I know they obviously skateboard, and I know Christian Slater is pretty badass in it. And I was like, I think they kill his brother. I was like, what's the actual plot though? And I couldn't remember it. And I realized going back and rewatching it, it's because it's like, it doesn't make any sense. So you've got Colonel Track is fighting against communism quite officially because he has a store in which they're supposedly sending funds to fight communism in Vietnam. A very American thing to do in many respects. Yeah. But secretly, he's actually sending guns to battle communism, I believe, which still, make no mistake, makes him a good guy because he's fighting communism.
But the other thing as well, which I get, but also they were doing inventory on penicillin and all that stuff. But it was a video store, wasn't it?
It looked like a video store to me.
So where's the penicillin
is this from? I don't, but that's the thing. I don't think it was a video store. It looked like a video store, but I think it was just a store set up as. And another thing, like this whole LA thing in 1989, it's kind of like Karate Kid. They kind of posited that the whole valley was obsessed with karate when it wasn't a real thing. But in the movie, everyone was obsessed with karate. In this, like this whole section of LA, it's like everyone can speak Vietnamese. Like half the population is Vietnamese, and everyone's kind of obsessed with Vietnamese culture. It's a really bizarre twist on the film. But I was like, so is Colonel Track is he only guilty of supporting the movement a little bit too hardcore? Like on the surface, he's supporting the movement, but he shouldn't be sending guns. That's one thing. I have no idea what fucking Ed is up to. Like, is Ed only guilty of owning the warehouse where they store the guns? Like, what is it? I have no idea what his end game is. Zero.
No, not a clue. And he became, as well, right, the worst Uber customer in the world at the end, where, like, his entire line at the end was just telling the guy, take a left here, take a right here, go up there, go down there. And all I could write down for that entire thing was, this entire ending scene is on this guy taking hostages, right? I wish he had a manlier gun.
Yeah, it's quite a feminine gun. It's like one of those old Western guns where a lady kept in a dress kind of thing. But that speaks to the character of Ed, because one, I couldn't figure out why he was involved. Like, they talk about it a few times. Him and Track, they're like, oh, we're tied at the hip. We're in this together. I have no idea why Ed is in this with Colonel Track. None whatsoever. And I'm sure someone could explain it to me, but I really was paying attention when I watched this film.
Yeah,
I don't know what he's doing. As I said, Colonel Track is never really a bad guy. I don't really know what the point of this plot is. It's kind of strange. But then further to that, because obviously you need things to happen to push the plot along. And what happens is just a number of... I've never seen a movie where there are 3 deaths and all 3 of them are accidents. Basically, this whole movie hinges on the fact that Ed is quite clumsy. Like... Vin's death is ludicrous.
Yeah, like, but also that's not an accident, right? I love when they walk back in the room and Bobby's panicking. He goes, I've done this many times. I've had it done to me. I don't know how he died. You had a wet towel wrapped around his neck, cutting off his air supply.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, I honestly believe, like, he wasn't overdoing it. Like, you can see he's there, he's uncomfortable. But I don't think anybody was pushing the point where they thought he was going to die. So he's basically died because he has an underlying health condition, which nobody mentions. And let's be clear, they could have sorted out this whole movie if they'd had a bit of sense and gone, listen, if we set this up as auto-asphyxiation, we put him in a cupboard, we put this around his neck, we pretend that he was jerking off in the cupboard and died because he got carried away. There's no way Brian's investigating. Nobody wants any part of that action. Everyone's like, okay, dude, he was up to something weird. He was doing it in a hotel.
Movie over, done.
Movie over. Oh shit! Vincent's auto asphyxiation. He got carried away. So then Rain dies because they have like an altercation. But again, they're not planning on killing him. He just shoots him by accident. And even then, when Ed kills Track at the end, again, he's not planning to. It just gets out of hand. Basically, so much of this movie's plot rests on the fact that Ed is a bit panicky and clumsy. That's about it. That is his great crime, is that I know he killed a bunch of people, but it's simply because he's clumsy and like he's terrible under pressure. He should not be in this line of work. Whatever this line of work is, and make it clear, I have no fucking idea what this line of work is. He shouldn't be in it. He's far too panicky.
Speaking of panicky, or the lack of panic, the only person who didn't show that they're in a tough situation was Vin. When Vin is being interrogated, the look on his face doesn't show I'm in trouble. Like that dude, like he had no panic on his face. He had nothing.
That's what I mean. He wasn't in trouble. Like I don't think anyone thought he was going to die. It's like, these guys don't know what they're up to. But I don't want to be a dick. Did Vin kind of deserve to die? That sounds a bit harsh, but he's been working at this video shop / communist, anti-communist store for 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And basically the boss says, listen, don't read up on the numbers. Just let it go. Anyone else is like, well, that's a bit fucking weird. I'll let it go. Instead, he goes and breaks into a warehouse off his own back and starts going through their inventory. I'm like, who the fuck does that? It's like this whole amateur sleuth thing obviously just runs through the family. And I'm not, maybe deserving to die is a little bit harsh, but I was like, dude, just let it go. You're like, what, 18, 19? But he's so stressed out that he immediately just starts smoking Marlboro Red. Who starts with Marlboro Red? This kid's a psycho, dude.
It's funny as well, right? Because the way he acts towards his brother Brian as well, where he just tells Brian off for everything. Oh, I did your homework. I did this. Oh, would you act like a proper person? Things like that. And it's like, dude, you haven't got a clue what's going on either. You've noticed there's some iffy things going on. So instead of actually approaching proper channels or whatever, you break into a warehouse. Yeah. And you got caught by the most obvious looking security device I have ever seen.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And maybe you're knobbing the boss's daughter. Maybe just give it a rest for a minute.
Yeah, but he's a weird kid. Like, this is the guy who's got a picture of his girlfriend on his bedside table.
Yeah.
But it's a picture of his girlfriend that also has her dad in it. I'm like, dude, what the fuck is that about? Like even if, right, and I get it, it's 1989, we don't have digital cameras. It might be the only photo you can get hold of. cut out the old man. At least fold it on his side. You don't want a picture of an old man on the side of your bed. It's just weird.
It's weird, isn't it? Because when he thinks Brian is asleep and he grabs the photo to just give a bit of a Tommy Tank, who's he staring at? Colonel Track or the missus?
No, he's a weird kid. But this, I don't know, like, I just still can't believe we go through this whole movie and there's not a genuine bad guy in it. I was trying to think why that, like, is it just bad writing? Or if I were to give the movie a bit more credit, probably more credit than it deserves, are they trying to make the quote unquote bad guys that clumsy and unthreatening as to kind of justify a solid, a solitary skateboarder basically taking them down? Like, you wouldn't believe if these were genuine bad guys with guns and stuff like that. You're like, well, there's no way Brian's taking them down, because these are just like a bunch of clumsy middle-aged men who don't really know what they're doing. You're saying, like, I can kind of see how Brian might.
Yeah, I
don't actually believe that is the case, but I was trying to give.
Yeah, the justification, trying to bring a justification. I get that. I mean, and maybe that actually helps me then, because they're a bunch of clumsy old men who do it. That how Brian quickly becomes a domestic terrorist. Like, it's
he really does.
Yeah, it's so quick how he does it. Like, he's able to.
It was like the low key version of, because I was trying to think of like a comparative kind of setup, and the only one I could come up with, bizarrely, was Rambo: First Blood. Like, everyone forgets, and we mentioned on previous podcasts, that Rambo: First Blood is a very different movie to the other Rambos.
Yeah,
it's much more grounded. And one of the things that people take for granted when you watch that film is that he's not fighting proper soldiers. They make him much more realistic and grounded by, like, yeah, he's kind of fighting a small army, but he's fighting a bunch of clumsy weekend warriors, basically. And I was like, is this the kind of equivalent for a kind of, like, I was going to call him an amateur sleuth, but you're going to call him a domestic terrorist, of course. But I think you're right.
Yeah, and to be fair, right, I loved how they depicted him as quite smart. Mm-hmm. He knew he wanted to blow it up and blame Colonel Track. So I get that. So the first thing he's got to do is get the security guards who are just in the way, out of the way. So he tricks them into the weird roller shack thing. He locks the door with the easiest lock that they can break out of. Okay, I get that. Then there's two grown men in that heavy thing, and he's able to push it away from the fuel dump. I get that.
It's not far, but if you remind me of the scene from Predator, when Arnold Schwarzenegger lifts the truck and pushes it into the camp.
So I get that. He did that fine. Then he's able, before he did all that, he had the foresight to open one side of the cage, right? He lit with a stolen lighter from Colonel Track or from Vin, whoever it was. He lit a jug of acetone or whatever it is, flammable liquid, and he got it perfect. He was able to push it under and it exploded. So apparently this kid is smart as fuck. But then what he uses to protect himself from the fire or from the explosion is a pallet.
It is indeed a pallet. Well, he's still a kid, I suppose. I mean, how old is he supposed to be in this? Like 17 years old? So, you know, he's 16, smart, but he's not that smart. But it is, like you say, it's surprising how quickly it escalates. Like, suddenly he's blowing up buildings. Like, this is getting pretty hardcore pretty quick.
Yeah.
But that is the thing, though. It's an interesting point, because we've gone, 20 minutes into this podcast, and what have we not mentioned? Skateboarding. It's bizarre. Because
I was just about to do it. I wanted to talk about him and his friends, who they pay a guy to fly them around so they can look for a swimming pool.
Well, dude, straight away, it's one of the most 80s things you'll ever see. Like, they're just skating at the airport on the airstrip. Like, basically, it's like nobody, like, now you would be shot dead by police.
But do you know what makes that so iconic as well?
What's that?
Is that song.
Oh, dude, the song's amazing.
Well, whilst they're skating, you've got that song, Gleaming the Cube. Oh my
God. That has absolutely been stuck in my head since I've watched that film. Yeah. It's one of those, like, I had forgotten how awesome that song is. You know, like, there's a whole bunch of, like, super iconic 80s songs, you know, like I've already mentioned Karate Kid, all these, you know, Lost Boys, stuff like that. But the Gleaming the Cube track, once you hear it, there's no unhearing it again. It's obviously taken 20 years for it to drop out of my head, but it is back now with a vengeance. It reminds me of the same way that I'd totally forgotten how awesome the montage song from
Basketball.
No.
I've seen Immeasurable Police.
No. I'll get it now. Monster Squad. There we go. Monster Squad.
I thought you actually meant the song It's a Montage.
No. Sorry. The montage song from it was like, you know, like similar to this. I hadn't seen Monster Squad in years, and suddenly you get to the montage sequence and you hear that song. You're like, what the fuck? This song is an all-time 80s banger. And I'm not sure if this is quite in that league, but it's not far off. It is an absolute earworm.
I want to set up a playlist. I think I'm going to do it of these songs that we've talked about, because you've got the Monster Squad song, which is great. You've got Gleaming the Cube. You've got the song at the end of The Wraith, which I think is fantastic as well.
Like a kind of like song list of like forgotten 80s movie bangers.
Because you get the other one from Cobra as well.
That's a great shout. We have to do this and share it on the page now. So we will do this.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, we got to get at least 10 songs which have largely been forgotten. None of the obvious ones. We're not going to put Rocky 4 on there. Fuck that shit. You're getting The Wraith, you're getting Cobra, you're getting Monster Squad, and you're getting Gleaming the motherfucking Cube. And it's going to be an absolutely awesome playlist.
You are forgetting one as well. I mean, I know it's the 90s, but we got to put Bodies.
What is it? Body
Count.
Body Count, that's it. From Universal Soldier.
From Universal Soldier.
That's it. Yeah. We're not keeping it to the decade. We're not purists. We're just putting the bangers down. But yeah, it's a weird thing, because when you go and watch this in terms of the actual skateboarding, and one of the technical advisors was an original Z-Boy, Stacey Peralta, on this film.
Stacey Peralta, yeah.
Is that despite it only being a few years before Tony Hawk's Pro Skater made the sport incredibly mainstream, this movie is much more aligned with skateboarding from the 70s, and it being like that alt niche a la Dogtown and the Z-Boys thing, especially when they skateboard in pools. Like, if you go and watch the documentary 2001 and then the dramatization with Heath Ledger, which was made in 2005, I think, a big part of that was that kind of alternative lifestyle thing where they find abandoned pools in LA and they skate in those, and that's what they're pushing in this film. It's not the modern day, and when I say quote unquote modern day interpretation of skateboarding, that really came through with Tony Hawk, who, despite being in this film, really came through in like the mid-90s with the PlayStation game. And obviously the actual skateboards changed very literally.
Yeah,
the design of them.
I was so shocked when I because I had one of those skateboards from the 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, me too.
And I was so shocked when they had them, and I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, they can do the things on those skateboards that are ridiculous.
Yeah, well,
they're so heavy.
Well, it was like, I remember there was like the big crossover when I was young, because I used to be into like roller skating. Like, we used to play roller hockey.
Yeah.
And when we started, we all had like the quad roller skates, like the old school, like they were like more like ice skating versions of them. I know they're not ice skating, but you know what I mean? Like the big chunky ones with like the stopper and everything. Yeah. But they still had that kind of like 1 foot in the 70s style. And then all of a sudden overnight, like inline skating came in and just absolutely took over. And it felt like the same thing with skateboarding. Like when I was younger, those style of skateboards were the skateboards. And then just one day, it was just that much thinner, traditional skateboard, what we think of today as being a skateboard anyway.
Can you inline skate, by the way?
Yes.
I can't. I can quad skate. I can't inline skate.
I guess if you can like ice skate, then it's much the same thing, I suppose. But
I can't. I
did quite a bit when I was younger. So I used to be able to skate. So it'll be interesting if I threw on a pair now, would I just fall over? I've got to be careful, because as being 6'12", whatever it is, I can't afford to fall over being this height. It's just absolutely out of the question. But
I was about to say, if you put skates on, you become 7 foot. Don't you?
Oh yeah, I'm super fucking tall.
Yeah.
But like the skateboards, like they still look cool, and that is, I mentioned it briefly in the film. One of the most important parts of this film is the fact that Christian Slater is just cool as shit. Like,
he is.
When I was like 8, 9 years old, when I watched this for the first time, Christian Slater was one of the coolest guys in the world. Of course, he was doing his like weird Jack Nicholson impression. We mentioned on previous podcasts, we all think maybe he might actually be Jack Nicholson's son, which isn't out of the question, because Jack Nicholson is a renowned coxman. So we know he was out there laying pipe in Hollywood. So it's not out of the question. But he's even said that he was always doing an impression, the squinty eyes talking through his face. That doesn't make sense, but it does if you watch his performance. But like I said, when I was watching this as a kid, like he was like just the height of cool between this and Heathers and Cups and stuff like that. I was just like, he was like the quintessential cool American teenager kind of thing. And yeah, like I think the look is aged brilliantly. Like his hair, it's his hair,
the cross earring, everything about it.
It still looks cool.
The shorts, everything. I love his look. I wanted to mention when he has that little montage as well, where he's trying to get with Vin's ex or widow,
which we need to talk about in a minute.
Yeah. But when he starts doing all that, right, he takes the earring out and he starts cutting his hair. Mm-hmm. They concentrated a lot on him removing his glove, his fingerless glove.
Yep.
Like it's never been removed. Like the way they were concentrating on it, and it was coming off like he was removing a part of like a second skin.
Yeah, like he'd wore that glove. Like that glove's been on for like 2 years.
Yeah,
it's
like
just not come
never
off.
come off. Yeah, I thought that was so weird that he concentrated so much on that glove.
Well, this is just going to lead us to one question after another now, because it's, as we mentioned earlier, it's a weird script, this film. But the sudden change that he goes through, like, is he putting on a show to get a date with Tina, or not Tina? Is that a name?
Yeah, it was Tina Vach, wasn't it, or Tina Vach?
Yeah, Tina. Or was it an actual change of lifestyle? Like, I couldn't decide like what his intention was at that point. Was it just to trick Tina to go on a date? But then the way he talks to his friends, like, no, he seems to be fully committed to this change of lifestyle.
I don't know,
it's so dramatic.
I don't know if I closed my eyes or if I missed the trick. Because all of a sudden he's talking to Tina. I was not Vach, by the way, it's Tina Track, isn't it? Colonel Track's daughter. Mm-hmm. He's talking to her as Brian Kelly, the skateboard guy. Mm-hmm. And then I'm sure I watched that conversation, but I can't remember it because I can't remember what then led him to go into the depths of his wardrobe to pull out the one shirt that he's got, to cut his hair, to do all that.
It's because I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, I don't know what led him to do that either. It was so insane.
There was that conversation like with the terrible, truly terrible cop. Is it Al Lucerne, whatever his name is?
Al Lucero.
Lucero. He is, and make no mistake, he is an appalling cop.
He's awful.
Appalling cop.
He is awful.
But he gives him that chat, but like I couldn't decide if it was like a means to an end, like he was trying to trick people to get into these circles to get what he ultimately wanted. But then the way he was the way he changed, not only the way he dressed, you know, if he was just like, he was like that around Tina, I was like, all right, fair play. He's just trying to get in with Tina because he needs that information, you know, linked to her father. So, you know, because he's still doing the investigation into his adopted brother's death. But all of a sudden then he's nicer to his father, his mother and stuff. He's different in school. I was like, no, this is like a genuine lifestyle change. And I'm like, why? I can't figure it out.
I do think it was probably to make up for Vin. They were two sides of a coin, weren't they? You had Vin, who was the pride of the parents and everything like that. And he was smart in school, which is the Asian stereotype. I've never, like, it's ridiculous. But again, it's the 80s. And then you had him, who was the rebel on the other side. So he was probably... It wasn't explained a lot in the film, but he was probably just trying to then take over Vin's side a little bit and become the pride of everyone and things like that. But it did make me laugh. Not his mum dropping the cup when she saw him, but him blowing up the bike pump. Him using the bike pump to blow up his bike pump. His dad just staring at it. It was brilliantly played by Ed Lauter, by the way. Who just drives past him and then crashes into the garage.
It's such an 80s thing. It's like, whoa, Brian's turned into a fucking nerd. What the fuck? You know, it's so on the surface stuff.
All his friends, his friend. Can we mention Gabbo quickly, please? Why does Gabbo...
Is it Gabbo or Yabbo?
Yabbo, sorry, Yabbo.
Yabbo, okay.
Why does Yabbo...
live in a bomb shelter?
Yes.
I don't know.
With, apparently, no external lock. So if anybody knew that he lives up, they could jump the fence like Brian does a lot, and just go straight down there. And
I was trying to figure out, I was like, his dad basically briefly lost his mind in like a Y2K situation where he's briefly drunk the Kool-Aid and gone, listen, Shelley or Sandra, whatever his wife's name is, we've got to build a bomb shelter. The bombs are dropping. You know, this is, you know, the 80s Cold War. Maybe it's linked to the Cold War. He thought the Russians were going to send the bombs over. But when he saw Rocky IV, he was like, no, Sylvester Stallone sorted out. There's no way the bombs are dropping. Everything's fine. And it's like, well, what the fuck are we going to do with that bomb shelter out in what appears to be the front garden, not the back garden? So we might as well turn it into Yabbo's bedroom / skater, I don't know, like workshop. And make no mistake, it is a workshop because he creates what was at the time. It's easy to look back and laugh now with the whole stainless steel and everything. Again, when I was 8, 9, 10
I still thought it looked cool as fuck now.
Yeah, but when I was 9 years old, it was legitimately one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I don't think that's an exaggeration. When I saw that skateboard, the black skateboard with the what is it, steel, aluminium like top, whatever
just call it the chrome inlays around it,
like
and
the
then
whole thing. I was just like, that might be the best. Like, it was, if it wasn't for hoverboards in Back to the Future, that would be the coolest skateboard ever. And I think maybe that's why it doesn't get talked about. When anyone talks about skateboards from the late 80s, early 90s, they always talk about hoverboards from Back to the Future too. But dude, this, for me at least when I was younger, this was up there. And I think it was because it felt obtainable. Of course, hoverboards were this cool thing, which of course you couldn't own because they didn't exist. I was like, I'll get one of those in 2015. It'll be fine. Obviously, that didn't work out. We just got high interest rates instead. It's all very depressing. But that skateboard, I was like, maybe I'll fucking own that skateboard one day.
It's probably nobody's talking about it because, again, as you said, nobody watched this film. So,
except for a handful of skateboarding kids, I suppose.
Yeah, and us who didn't skateboard. But
the thing is, though, it does have that connection, though. Like you said, it wasn't watched by many people, but it is a proper cult film because I feel like everyone who watched this film as a kid has legitimately fond memories of it. Fond memories. Like, I don't absolutely. Like when the people who have seen this, when they found out we were doing Gleaming the Cube, like fucking awesome, you're doing Gleaming the Cube.
Well, you've got to have fond memories of it because if you look into this film too deep, it makes absolutely no sense. There is no point around it. The fact that, again, the terrible cop, Al Lucero, is not doing anything about Brian.
Well, not only is he not doing anything, Brian, he's like actively fighting against the case at times. It feels like it's like, you know, Brian is coming to him with genuinely important information and he's going out of his way not to listen to a thing. And of course, at the end of the film, Al Lucero flips on a coin and suddenly he's his best friend. And it's, again, one of the many underplayed aspects of this film. Clearly, what they were trying to do was Al Lucero can see himself in Brian and he's trying to get Brian to be a better kid. And that's why Brian changes his clothes and stuff because of the influence of Al Lucero. And then at the end, once he kind of comes good, Al Lucero is like, oh, you know, you came good and I'm like almost like a father figure to you. But it's all kind of just on the surface. So it just feels like every single one of these character beats just falls from the fucking sky. Yeah. You're like, wait a minute, you're a dick a minute ago and now you're best friends. I don't get it. But
I loved it as
like
well.
You said, sorry.
Speaking of Al Lucero and they were making the skateboard and everything like that, I love Chekhov's skateboard tool.
Absolutely.
They're building it, they're tightening the trucks, they're doing all that, and you see him just slip it, you see Yabo slip it into Brian's top pocket. I was like, you're going to need that whatever later on, but we're not going to mention why.
We're not going to mention what, but it's going to be important. Yeah. What, for something skateboarding? I don't know. It could be.
Yeah, I know. What was it for? It's to hot wire a car.
Hot wire a car. Like, there is no fucking way you just put that in a car and just, hey, presto, off to the fucking
All
races.
He did, though, was break the key cylinder.
That's all he did. All he did was fuck that car up. There's no way it starts that car. But we have to come back to, we mentioned at the start, because obviously you're being sold in this film that Brian's the hero. Of course, he's rough around the edges. He's an alt kid and stuff like that. But the whole thing is a hero's journey. You know, he's going to wear chinos soon. He's legit. But can you be a good guy when, yes, he's investigating his adopted brother's death? For sure. Fair enough. He is clearly also trying to nail his girlfriend, which is totally fucked up and never mentions film. And even she's cool about it.
I mean, it's not like his brother's going to come back and be upset about it, is it? So I think...
Well, that is a very, very pragmatic approach to that problem, sir. And I'm glad I'm not your fucking brother. But it's just, dude, you don't go fucking with your brother's ex. And again, it's not even his ex. It's his ex by default.
It's technically the widow, isn't it?
It's his girlfriend widow. I don't know what the official term is for that. But you cannot go trying to lay pipe with your dead brother's girlfriend. And like I said, I won't say ex-girlfriend. They didn't break up. He just died.
But what they haven't actually hinted at is how long they were together. No, I'm going by time on this one, right? Because he only worked for Colonel Track for 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Right, and every time we say 2 weeks, I just think of Total Recall.
I was exactly the same. 2 weeks.
Yeah. So he's only worked. So did he get the job through his missus, or did he meet the missus through the job?
That's a good question.
Because if it's 2 weeks, I'm with Brian. You know, they didn't.
Is there like a cutoff in terms of? And again, we're not talking about any real person. We're talking about whether it be adopted or otherwise. We're talking about your brother. So if your brother, right, under normal circumstances, breaks up with a girl and they've only been together for 2 weeks, you think she's fair game. That's not even taking into consideration the fact that they didn't break up. He died, and you're still. Dude, I'm not with you on this one. I think it's totally unacceptable.
There's got to be a statute of limitations, hasn't there, about how long it takes before you can hook up with your dead
when it
brother's
comes
missus.
I don't think there is. We'll give it maybe like 20 years. Like if there was there was a sequel to this film where they like meet up 20 years later, like she works in like, I don't know, design and print, and he's a lawyer, and they're like, fuck, I've not seen you since, oh my God, since Vin died and I blew up all those buildings. Jesus Christ, how crazy is that? Oh, how's your dad? Oh no, your dad's dead. Sorry, I shouldn't have brought that up. And then they end up having like this serendipitous relationship. Maybe I could buy into this. I'm not going on this like 2-3 week shit. No fucking way.
If Vin's in a coma, then I absolutely appreciate. Don't go for your missus. But Vin's dead. It's not like he can argue the fact. And I don't think
it's not about arguing the fact. It's the principle of it, sir. The principle. You just don't do it.
All right. Yeah. You want me to be a real twat?
Are you not already? Jesus Christ.
It's not like they were blood. Vin and Brian.
No, I will give you that. It was adopted. But if you've grown up together, which I assume they have, the same rules apply, man. You just can't be doing that. So yeah, Brian, as cool as he was, a bit of a wrong and all the same, I think.
I don't think so. I'm with Brian on this one.
But then then he looks so cool, I immediately like forgive him. Like, is anyone balled up to a funeral like Brian? Like Vin's funeral is there, and everyone, it's a traditional funeral.
Even Yabo was sat with the family wearing a fucking tux or a morning suit or whatever it's called. Yeah,
a morning suit, is that a thing?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, no.
MOURN, morning suit.
Oh, a morning. I thought you meant a morning as in the day has started.
Yeah. No.
Like, what the hell's a morning? Like, you only wear it in the morning? I've never heard of
to mourn, a morning suit.
I see what I mean. But no, the way Brian rocks up, and he just looks cool as shit. He's got one sleeve up, one sleeve down. Yeah. It's just black enough to get away with being like at a funeral. But my God, like I said, Brian might be a dick, but he gets away with it because he's just cool. He's just fucking cool, man.
What I did like about this film, like in the 80s and stuff, that they would still, because it's a film, obviously, new kids were going to watch it, they're still trying to put the safety aspect to skateboarding on it.
Oh, they really lean into that, don't they?
So they got the pads, they got the helmet. But what I loved, right, because I know they can't. So Mum bought him the pads and the helmet. Again, Chekhov's pads and helmet. When are these going to be used? Because he doesn't use it.
It's going to be needed
until they become the unofficial, I don't know, superhero outfit that he puts on at the end. But I loved it when Yabo called all the guys. Tony Hawk. Some of these names are fantastic. You had Buddy, Gremick, and then Sam, right? But what I love when you see them all rock up at the Pizza Hut truck, I laugh my ass off because they're all wearing their pads, but they're wearing them on their ankles.
It's weird, but again, it all speaks to like this being like a different era of skateboarding, like especially like towards the end, like. A big part of like the final set piece isn't what we think of as being traditional skateboarding, i.e. doing tricks and stuff like that, grinding around the city. It's very much the kind of more sports-based downhill skating where you do, and I think they do set it up because they're like, well, stunt double or not, whoever is going down the hill at that speed has to be wearing a helmet and pads. Yeah. So it just has to become part of the film. But like you said, there are like some famous skateboarders. Like, was it Mike McGill, Mark Gator Rogowski, Rodney Mullen, Rich Dunlop, Eric Dressen, Lance Mountain, Mike Valley, apologies if I'm getting some of these names wrong, Chris Black, Ted Natus Kalpus, I think his name is Chris Boss, Steve Says, and obviously Tony Hawk. Yeah. There's like a whole bunch of skateboarders, but back then it didn't really mean anything. Like even Tony Hawk didn't really mean anything back to me.
No, which was funny, isn't it? Because he had a Tony Hawk sticker he put on the car and plane as well. But you mentioned Yabo was actually Max Perlich. He was a professional skateboarder as well. Yeah. What I loved as well was that scene where they, without GPS, without mobile phones or anything like that, they knew exactly where the stolen cop car was going to be at the bottom of the hill. And you got them all at the top of the hill.
So weird.
Yeah, that scene where they're going down, Tony Hawk's pulling double duty. Because he's skating. You can clearly see him skating down the hill.
Yeah. But
then it goes to him driving the car and playing chicken.
Driving the Pizza Hut truck.
Yeah. So he's pulling double duty.
Well, there's like those, like we make the reference to it earlier in the film. Like this film becomes a different movie for the last 15 minutes when suddenly all the budget comes in, you get the chase, and it suddenly does feel like a skateboarding movie, like the one in my head where it's like, oh, me and my skateboarding buddies are going to go solve a murder or solve a crime by like working together by skateboarding.
Yeah.
The rest of the film is not that at all. It's just Brian doing amateur sleuthing. But at the end, they're like, dude, isn't this supposed to be a fucking skateboarding movie? We've got these skateboarders, and suddenly it becomes a bit like almost buffoonish. And as you said, like it's like, how do they know it's there? But even Brian's plan, like throughout, I'm like, does Brian know what he's doing, or is it all just kind of falling into place? Like even his big moment when you've got Ed and Track having their showdown, and obviously his daughter's there. His big plan is, okay, I'm going to skateboard through the window. He does that to zero effect. All he does is crash through a window. Track gets shot anyway, and everyone's like, "There's just a kid on the floor." Like, what the fuck just happened? So and they just leave.
He probably got Track shot because maybe Track wasn't going to get shot before that. Also, that weird shop that Track owns is doing well because he had a back garden that was long enough for Brian to build him enough speed.
Oh, dude, he's doing well, Track, for sure, with that weird video store / Vietnamese anti-communist store.
But I mean, there was so much back garden for him to skate through with enough of a little ramp.
Well, that's the thing. You've got to like create these like imaginary ramps, like the final shot where Ed is like gone on his weird Uber trip. And again, what is Ed's plan at this point? He's got the cops chasing him. What is he going to do? Go to the airport? Like Ed is fucked at this point. Brian does not need to get involved. The police will get him. Make no mistake. But when he has this like showdown at the end, when suddenly he has to skate up and jump and land on him, it's like, where was that ramp? It was just like an imaginary ramp. It just didn't, in terms of physics, it made zero sense.
Oh, it was so, because he was able to, but there was a fence on top of it. So did he jump over it? Did he jump around? Like, I don't even know where that came from. But I also loved as well that he kept catching up with them. Like when they went into the Terminator 2 aqueduct.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And he went down there and he jumped over the little water that was on the bottom and then he went up a hill. All of a sudden, he's right behind the car.
Well, that's the thing for the most of the movie. Like they have to, not most of the movie. That whole chase sequence at the end. He basically has to be traveling downhill the entire time. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Like they can't be like the next bit where it's like, oh shit, I've got to like push this skateboard uphill because the car will just disappear. So he has to just be going downhill constantly forever. Again, that's the thing, right? It feels like we're shitting on this movie. I enjoyed this movie, but make no mistake, it doesn't make any sense.
Oh no, absolutely not. I wanted to mention as well, right? You said about the fact that for a skateboarding movie, there's not much skateboarding in there. Mm-hmm. I think the producers or the director probably felt the same as you, because I loved like the random insertions of. They probably just turned around and went, "Oh, you know, there's not much skateboarding. What do we do? What do we?" I know. Whenever Brian needs to just be on his own, let's have him just do some skateboard tricks in a weird.
He goes full Flashdance.
Yeah.
It's bananas. And
you went Flashdance, I went Footloose.
Oh, dude, I had them both. I've got different notes. At one point I put Footloose, and one point I put Flashdance. But either or, pick your poison. But yeah, the point where it's just like, oh, dude, I just need to be on my own. I need to skate. And you do have those awkward bits when they shoot him from like the waist up, and you can see he's just kind of hopping, but clearly not on a skateboard. And then they do a wide shot with the dude with like the awesome barnet. And they kind of put it off. But basically what they're doing is, all right, we're going to have a Flashdance sequence in the middle of this film. Because exactly to your point, we don't have enough skateboarding. And we need to remind people that he skateboards. And he doesn't just have it. Although I don't know how it works out. He kind of attaches it to his belt sometimes, his skateboard.
Yeah.
It just that looks like you just pull your pants down.
Puts it in his holster.
Yeah, of course. Well, they do actually hint towards that in this film. Like when they land at the airport, and I'm not sure if it's still there. The airport has certainly been worked on since. But there is that statue of John Wayne at the airport at the very opening shot. I mean, are they trying to posit that skateboarders are modern day cowboys? I'm like, I think that's what they're trying to do at the start of this film. I'm like, dude, skateboarders are not modern day cowboys.
I do love that.
Fucking having.
I do love that opening shot though, where you've got them in sort of like that wavy light because the sun's on. You've got the song playing, and you've got them just skate. That looks cool as fuck even to today. I thought that looked great.
It's not about like it's relatively well acted. It's like the direction from Graham Clifford is pretty decent. There's there's a lot of things to like about this film. It's like, the biggest is just the fact that it doesn't make sense. Like, I actually quite like the fact that it's not like an outright skateboarding movie. Like you said, it feels somewhat forced at the end. It's like you have that bit at the end where Ed's in the car and they're basically playing a game of chicken with Tony Hawk driving a Pizza Hut van. And for some odd reason, why can't the driver match Tony Hawk's steely gaze? Like, it's like, oh, dude, look, Tony Hawk looks too crazy. I can't go. And he just drives into a wall or whatever the fuck he does. All that stuff feels like it's from a different film. The rest of it kind of, I think the director didn't want to make a skateboarding film. I think he wanted to make a film, where a young kid investigates his adopted brother's death. I think that was what he wanted to make. And they're like, dude, it's 1989. We got through some skateboards into this motherfucker. So it feels like two movies kind of glued together in many respects. But, it's fun, even if it doesn't make any sense.
It's fun to watch. It's still a laugh. It doesn't need to make sense a lot of the time. I'm going to caveat with saying it could do with making sense some of the time. But yes, I know what you mean. Yeah, but I mean, pick a lane, I guess, is what you're trying to say. Whether make it a skateboard movie or make it a sleuth movie. But yeah, it's like they had two scripts floating around and they just amalgamated them into one and just, this is
the end suddenly goes very BMX Bandits, the kind of film you almost remember this being. BMX but for an hour, it's just not that movie at all. So it's a strange beast, Gleaming the Cube, probably stranger than you remember. But I think it is because, like you say, they're trying to glue these two elements together and it doesn't quite work. A lot of the plot points become quite fuzzy. A lot of the motivations just get, the motivations, make no mistake, are just fucking lost. I find it unbelievable that we can go through this whole film and not really, Track, I just think his motivations are weird and underdeveloped, but they're there. The Ed character, I still have no idea. I find it amazing. All I know about him is he owns a warehouse. That's it.
Yeah, I have.
Maybe we're missing something, but that's all I know about him.
I have no idea. Well, he owns a warehouse and he shows up to every Vietnamese function.
Well, dude, they're so popular in LA at the time.
It's ridiculous.
You can't walk for a Vietnamese function.
You know what's all right? I really know because I don't remember watching. I don't think I've ever seen it, and now I want to because we watched this. I want to watch Thrashing.
I don't think I've ever seen Thrashing
with Josh Brolin.
Yeah, I know the film. I've never seen it.
No.
Well, we don't do many films where neither of us have seen them. We've done a couple, I think.
Yeah.
So maybe Thrashing's the one.
I think we got to watch.
Well, that's the list.
I can't speak. I think we've got to watch Thrashing.
Yeah, and you need to be able to speak. This is a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
So should we move on to favorite scene? I think we've covered the film.
Yeah. Let's go for it.
And going back to what we spoke about just a moment ago, and I almost went the entire movie without bringing it up, which is absolutely bonkers, but it probably is the Flashdance sequence. It arguably needs stronger music and better transitions between Skater and Christian Slater. But, like I say, it was like he just looked cool. He kind of pulls that whole sequence off. It's ludicrous. But it speaks to the weird tonal shifts of this film. That halfway through, you just have Christian Slater. I'm just going to skateboard for a bit to music. It's absolutely, it really is silly, but it's perhaps my favorite part of the film.
No, fair play. I think it's great, and to me, it's a skateboarding one as well. And I've mentioned it already. It's the beginning. It's the way they're introduced on the runway. I think
that is cool. Yeah, that was my second choice.
Yeah.
The other one, if I was going to give one, and we're just going through the whole film now, when I was younger, it was definitely Yabo in his bomb shelter making the skateboard.
I was literally about to say my second one would be the kit, the I love a kit up scene anyway. I've told you this before.
Yeah.
Any way, shape or form. So this kit up scene about how he's creating this magic skateboard. We're going to put the black wheels on because they're faster, but we're not going to get any grip. And
dude, these wheels are too dangerous. No, bro, I gotta go super fast. I gotta clean that cube, bro.
Well, you found a guy with a bald head. Okay, go for it.
Oh, Jesus Christ. So I mean, watching it now, I couldn't help but be enamored by the Flashdance sequence. But realistically, when I was younger, it was the Yabo making the skateboard sequence.
For me, if we're looking at when I was younger, it's Yabo. But now looking at it through, I guess, a 40-year-old's eyes, it's the intro to the skateboarders on. I think it's
that bit is like wonderfully nostalgic. Like I said, them just showing up at an airfield just on a skateboard. It's like, dude, that is not happening. But that shit happened in 1989. You could just fucking roll up at airports, do whatever the fuck you wanted. But yeah, those times are sadly gone. In terms of loves and hates, should I go first?
Yeah, feel free. Anyway.
Yeah. Number one, unsurprisingly, Slater's hair, both cut and uncut. Like, make no mistake, when he cut his own hair, it still looked awesome. Yeah. Like, if anything, he was unwilling to really go to town. What it really looked like is he just put some gel in it and combed it.
Although it was funny, because when they showed him cutting it, they showed him cutting the blonde bits out. But when you see it, it's still the same hair.
It's just mega blonde. Yeah, well, whatever the case, like, he's just fucking named. But the hair just looks great.
Yeah.
To the movie's commitment to accidental deaths, as I said, 3 deaths in this film, all of them accidents, unfucking believable. And number 3, yes, the super stainless steel skateboard. I mean, I would argue that across the board, that kind of late 80s, early 90s alt look has aged so well. It's, you know, the same thing with like John Connor in Terminator 2. Like, it doesn't look like it's aged today. That could just be a kid today. Maybe I'm sure like a 10-year-old be like, what the fuck are you talking about? But I think that like late 80s, early 90s alt look has aged beautifully. But realistically, it is still the skateboard for me.
Yeah, I mean, I get that with the alt look, mine, because obviously you've got him with the shirt, the T-shirt, the shorts, basically how I dress now as a 40-year-old man.
Well, it's just, it's a little bit like grungy, for lack of a better term. And that grunge look has never been a million miles away from the mainstream. I don't think there's ever been a point where, you know, if you dress like early 90s, late 80s grunge, you'd be like, what the fuck? You know, like, there are certain things from the 80s where if you had worn like 10 years ago, you'd be like, what the fuck is that guy wearing? Obviously, the 80s have come back. And even like the mid-90s stuff now, like that has become a look again. But if you'd worn that 15 years ago, you feel like, oh, this guy is clearly lost his fucking mind. Whereas I think that kind of Christian Slater look, you could wear that at any point of the past 20, 30 years and you'd be like, yeah, that's fine. That's acceptable.
Which goes into my loves. Christian Slater's look, I think, is fantastic.
Yeah, I've gone for the hair, but I think you're right. Just the look is strong.
Just his look is great. Like Yabo, I love Yabo.
Yabo is good.
Yabo's cool, and the skateboard at the end, the whole skateboard kid up scene, him in his superhero outfit. It's I think it's great.
Can you have a superhero outfit with like a safety helmet on? I'm just not sure if that's acceptable. Again, his mum has chosen well. If you're going to have pads and a fucking dweeby, you know, head thing, it's like, it wasn't a bad choice. They actually look pretty cool. And you do kind of get away with it with the downhill section. Like, well, you kind of have to wear that stuff. Otherwise you would just die, I suppose. Yeah. But you really, to force that into a film, like safety features is absolutely
I wonder
bonkers.
as well for the actual skateboarders doing a trick with that. Like, that board looked cool, but was it actually like theoretically sound for skateboarding? Like, did the guy who used it?
I see what you mean.
Like, was he like, you've just given me a death trap? Yeah.
Was like the one in Yabo's dungeon and the one he hands to Brian, is that the same one used by, you know, the stunt double skating downhill, or did they have another version where like, dude, we can't use this fucking?
Because I had to question it, because when they mentioned about like it'll give you no grip or anything, and you see Brian going down the hill towards Colonel Track's house, and he does that weird slide a couple of times. I'm wondering if that's the actual stunt double thing. Dude, I've got to fucking stop.
Yeah.
So
that was that's such a cool look, though. Such a cool look. In terms of hates, number one, fuzzy motives. That really is the big problem with this film. I was surprised when I went back and watched this film how much of it I enjoyed and how much of it I actually thought held up quite well, but the motives do not. No. And a big part of that is the script. You're going through, it's like, why is anyone doing any of this stuff? It's absolutely bonkers. Number two, the terrible cop. You know, we mentioned it, suggesting like he sees himself in Slater, but it never really comes across again in the script. Yeah. So he just feels like this really clumsy character who just, I don't know, like I said, above all else, he's just a bad cop. And number three, skateboarding feels incidental for like the longest time. It's like the skateboarding aspect is used more to signify his outsider status, if that makes sense, until the end when it goes full BMX Bandits. It's like for the longest time, rather than it being, oh, this is a skateboarding movie, we're just showing you that, oh, he's an outsider alternative kid by the fact that he walks around with a skateboard. But beyond that, for the longest time, it doesn't do much else. It's not important to the plot unless he's rolling bombs into buildings. What the fuck he does? I'm good at sneaking in number 4. I do apologize. Jumping through windows to zero effect. It's set up at this big moment, and zero effect is probably being too kind, because I think you're right. I think he actually got Colonel Track shot by jumping through that fucking window.
Yeah.
So jumping through a window to dramatically negative effect. That's my number 4.
I'm pretty much on board with you for a couple of them. The first one being the plot, I guess, or lack thereof.
Yeah.
And what the fuck was going on? Al Lucero is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's weird because do we want to blame? Because who's the actor, Stephen Bauer, who had top billing on a lot of the if you go, it's like the more alternative posters, like the straight to DVD stuff. He's got top billing alongside Christian Slater. It's like Christian Slater and Stephen Bauer in Gleaming the Cube. He's not terrible in it. I want to make that clear. He's just not given much to work with. They just make his character unlikable and an absolute idiot. So we're not blaming Stephen Bauer. Again, this comes back to a ill-conceived script, shall we say.
Yeah. Number 3, not enough Yabo.
Yeah, I go for that. I go for a bit more Yabo.
It needs more Yabo.
there is a different movie, like the different version of this movie. Al Lucero is like hardly in it, and it's basically about Brian and Yabo going on an adventure. Yeah, that is the alternative.
What it needed was because what it needed was Brian to have a sidekick that was helping him figure all this out.
And it would just make it more skateboardy. Yeah. If you were going like the full, let's turn this into a proper skateboarding movie, it would be him and Yabo doing skateboarding shit for most of this film for sure. And
I will sneak a 4th in because I wanted to agree with you. The jumping through a window scene, which basically just caused it all.
Terrible.
Yeah.
And they make it so dramatic. It's like, it feels like in the moment, it's like the centerpiece of the movie. It's like you get the build up, he jumps, he does like the classic, like 80s skateboarder pose where he arches his back and stuff. And he just injures himself onto the window. He's basically knocked himself out. Colonel Track's dead. Ed's got away. His girlfriend is being abducted. You're like, what the fuck did that just achieve, you moron?
Also, how did Colonel Track die from getting shot in the shoulder?
That's the thing. I thought he was going to survive because I couldn't remember if he lived or died because, let's be clear, it doesn't actually fucking matter. But when I saw him get shot in the shoulder, I was like, oh, well, he must live. It's one of those movie injuries. You either get shot in the shoulder or you get, if you're like an action hero, it happens in every 80s action film, you get that shot just above your hip, just below your stomach.
It's basically in the meat.
It's in the meat, yeah. So you're not getting hit in any internal organs. You can still go on about fighting theoretically, but you're hurt. It's one of those injuries. Like, oh, Colonel Track will be fine. No, he died from his minor shoulder injury. It's like, dude, Colonel Track's a pussy, man.
He really is.
I know, that sounds a bit harsh. Do you have any? There are definitely some alternative titles. This one.
There's
no way this is called Gleaming the Cube all over the world. No fucking way.
Right, so, I mean, they had some original titles as well. So it was Gleaming the Cube, A Brother's Justice, or Skate or Die. They were the titles that we were going to use. But then, you ready for this?
Skate or Die. Skate or Die was a video game, I think.
Yeah, it was a video game. Yeah. Which is probably released around about the same time, so I'm guessing.
Yeah, so that might have been an issue. I think it was a Konami, but it was definitely on the NES anyway. But hey ho.
Okay, so Argentina, Flying Over Danger.
Right, I'm just going to, because I don't want to say this for everyone, none of these are going to be any dumber than Gleaming the Cube, but equally they're not going to be as awesome as Gleaming the Cube. So yeah, we're going to run into a problem here, but that's fine. That's fine.
Yep. Brazil, Skateboards at Death Lane.
Nope, that is bad.
Denmark, Downtown Hero.
No, that sounds like a porn film.
Yep. France, Skate Rider.
I mean, it's a little on the nose, but sure.
Yep. Hungary, With Deadly Security.
God, what is that? What is that?
Yep. Italy, California Skate.
Yeah, well, it's better than the last one.
These are fantastic. Japan, Rolling Kids.
Yeah, fair enough, I guess.
Oh, Korea, bringing in the heat. Skateboard.
Yeah, well, let's go with that one. Skateboard. Yeah. Why not? That's what people remember it as a skateboard movie. And again, imagine if someone in Japan is doing their equivalent of this podcast, and this film is called What was it in Japan?
Rolling Kids.
Rolling Kids. And they're like, did you know, dude, in America, in the UK, this film was called Gleaming the Cube. And they're like, Gleaming the Cube, what does that even mean? I'm like, I don't know. It must be a translation thing, saying the same shit we say every week. The answer is nobody fucking knows what that means.
Oh, we're getting to some good ones now. There's loads for this. I'm going through more because they're all fantastic. Norway, skate or die.
Yeah, fair enough.
Poland, skateboard champion.
No, that sounds like a competition.
Portugal, the skateboard war.
No, that sounds like that's more like a Warriors version.
That's basically That's basically the plot of Thrashing. Two skateboard guys go up against each other.
Yeah. You think there's going to be like groups or something? No.
Yeah. Romania, basically, probably the guys who named this in Romania having the same conversation we have. They've put two scripts together. What can we call this film? Let's call it Skateboard Detective.
That's the perfect one. That's what this film should have been called, Skateboard Detective. 100% Skateboard Detective. The
conversation in Spain. The Americans have called it Gleaming the Cube. What the hell does that mean? I don't know. Look, I don't know what it means. So let's make up our own. Let's just call it On the Edge of the Abyss.
Yeah, they have run Gleaming the Cube through, auto translate on Google, and that's what has come out as. Like, is that what it means? Let's just go with it. We haven't got long enough. Dude, this is coming out tomorrow directly to VHS. We need a title. All right, it'll have to be the fucking Abyss one.
Sweden, right? They're going, so Gleaming the Cube. So what does they're doing something to a cube? Okay, we'll just call it On the Border.
On the Border, fantastic. I mean, yeah, that's kind of what it means, I suppose.
West Germany got 3.
West Germany. Just a reminder that this happened in the 80s. West Germany.
They got 3.
I love the idea that West Germany and East Germany both released it with different titles.
Oh no, these are all West Germany. So I'm guessing it. So it's either called Gleaming Heart.
Okay.
Rebels on Skateboards.
These are all from West Germany.
Yeah. Or Fatal Risk.
Fatal Risk. That sounds like a Stephen Baldwin movie from 1997. I mean,
we got to agree, the best one, the one that actually pinpoints what this film is about, is Skateboard Detective, yeah?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. 100%. As great as, like, if at one end you've got Gleaming the Cube, which makes no sense but kind of sounds awesome, at the other end you've got just the very literal, what is this movie? It's about a skateboarding detective. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Do you have any facts for this film?
I do have some facts for this film. They're all going to be about who did this, which skateboarder did that, but I'll go through them.
Mm-hmm. Go for it.
So former pro skater Tommy Guerrero made $500 per day teaching Christian Slater how to skateboard.
Well, he kind of, like, other than the tricks and stuff, he looks quite convincing, I suppose. Yeah.
Pro skaters Mike McGill and Rodney Mullen were the stunt doubles for Christian Slater.
Cool.
I grew up always thinking it was Tony Hawk who did
he's too lanky, I think.
The stunt on the freeway when Brian goes under the truck, which we didn't mention, that looked fucking awesome.
That was, again, like, where'd the budget go? It went into that. Although it did immediately remind me of National Lampoon's Vacation, because they do a similar thing with the car there, only this time it's with a skateboard. But it is very cool.
That was performed by Mark Gator Rogowski.
It's a fucking cool, like, that is legitimately awesome stunt in this film. Yeah. When he goes on the track.
So Max Perlich, who portrayed Yabo, was a prolific and veteran skater before filming. However, unlike all of the other skaters, was not a member of the Bones Brigade. The Powell Peralta-sponsored skate crew featured heavily in the movie. Perlich would do most, if not all, of his own skating for the film. So all the other skaters were part of the Bones Brigade. I didn't know Tony Hawk was part of that, but...
Yeah.
I mean, not saying I'm a massive skateboarder fan. While Brian and his friends are on the plane, his friends start applying skateboarding stickers to the plane's windows. One of the stickers reads Tony Hawk. Interestingly, Tony Hawk portrays Buddy, one of Brian's friends. During interview...
all the facts are just deep-cut skateboarding stuff, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. The song Brian is listening to in his room on his Walkman during the first act of the movie is Right Now by Johnny Rad. Rad is a novelty punk artist played by Rob Roy Fitzgerald. Featured in the skate movie The Search for Animal Chin, a comedy skate video hybrid produced and featuring the Bones Brigade from 1987. Mate, these are all, yes, obviously.
Yeah, all right, fair enough.
Yeah.
One more?
Yeah, Vin Kelly had been adopted for 11 years at the point when he died.
Okay, so they were properly brothers, so that leads back into the, like, he shouldn't have tried to sleep with his girlfriend.
But again, they weren't blood.
By that point, your brothers. So if they're 17 and
he did mention, because Brian turned around, didn't he, and said about they went to Disneyland and Brian kicked up a fuss, and he said he was 6 before Vin came into their world. So if it's 11,
so it would have been it would have been 17 then.
So I'd give him 18.
Yeah, so basically he can hardly remember him not being his brother. Dude, it's unacceptable. That's it. In terms of the legacy of this film, it's not a great one, but beyond the fact that it's obviously become a bit of a cult film, I mean, the obvious one is it's one of the first skateboarding movies, one that remains oddly well remembered. But realistically, the reason it's remembered above all else is the title. I think that is its legacy, as bizarre as that sounds. Like, everyone remembers it as an early skateboarding movie, but if this was called Skater Detective, would it be remembered in the same way? I don't think it would be. But does it have a legacy beyond, like, it's probably, and we can't speak to this because, you know, I used to skateboard a little bit when I was younger, but I'm not part of that world by any stretch. So I don't know how popular Gleaming the Cube is amongst the kind of, you know, skateboarding community. But for me, when I was younger, it was a cool film, and, you know, as I said, it's lived on surprisingly long in the memory for those who watched it. But beyond that, I don't think it's actually got that much of a legacy. If I were to make a change for this movie, the obvious one for me would be the motives. I'd make the bad guys more, I don't know, bad perhaps. There's never really any sense of threat in this movie beyond all the accidental deaths. So maybe I would kind of ratchet that up a bit. But I think the more important aspect of it is it'd be nice if they had genuinely clear motives. Certainly for Ed, who I have no idea what was going on. So if I was going to make one change, it would be to the script, which I think needs quite a bit of work.
I want to agree with you on that. I want to agree that it needs work, it needs motivation, it needs for the bad guys, things like that. But I can't get the past that this film needs more Yabble. So if I was to make one change, it would be add more Yabble. Make him part of the investigation. Yeah.
No, I think that's the right choice. It'd be good if they made it a bit more skateboardy, and Yabo more screen, because he's quite good on screen with Brian as well, with Christian Slater. So go for that. What's the next? Video games. So we've already mentioned that there wasn't a Gleaming the Cube video game, but there was a Skate or Die video game. But obviously, when people think of this movie and you think of video games, you can't remove Tony Hawk from Tony Hawk Skater, which to a whole generation was like legitimately one of the biggest video games in the world. Like, when I was growing up, like, it didn't even matter if you weren't into skating culture. Like, so much of just any kind of alt culture was tied into that. Like, you know, everyone I know can remember like the soundtrack to those video games. It was just like a massive part of growing up in like the mid to late 90s, you know? So but if you're going to do a Gleaming the Cube video game, you wouldn't turn it into a Tony Hawk video game, would you? It's like, what would you make it into? Like a visual novel with like a skateboarding section at the end? I have no idea.
So can I go?
Yeah, go for it, buddy.
So we mentioned Skate or Die, right? And I wouldn't make it Skate or Die from the NES. I never played them. The only Skate or Die I ever played was Skate or Die Bad and Rad from the Game Boy.
Yeah.
And that was a bit different. That wasn't on half pipes or anything like that. That was literally skating downhill, going against punks, going against monsters. Just go like randomly just jumping over spikes and things like that.
Like a skateboarding adventure game kind of thing.
Yeah, which is what I would take Skate or Die Bad and Rad. And you can make it a mobile game if you want, and I would turn that. I would have that as my.
I just love it. All the bad guys are warehouse owners and Vietnamese.
Yeah,
it's like this.
I'm not too sure you can have that this day and age. Let's make the bad guys the Vietnamese, but
that would be strange for sure.
Yeah, but no,
you could have it as white, middle-aged, warehouse owners for sure. I'm not sure. You'd probably need a little bit more variety in terms of the bad guys, but I like where we're going with this.
Yeah. So for me, it would be Bad and Rad, the 2D action video game. I'd try and reskin that, I think.
I think that's a great shout. I think that's an awesome shout. So I guess all we've got left is scores and recommendations. Now, this is a weird one for me because in many respects, this isn't a great film, but I still enjoyed it. It's like, just to be clear, I wouldn't recommend this to anyone who didn't grow up with it. I couldn't just go up to like a random dude like, you haven't seen 1989's Gleaming the Cube? No fucking way. You either watched it back in the day, you have a nostalgia for it, and I put it this way, I wouldn't like. if you were the same as me and you watch this as a kid growing up, and it's on Amazon Prime now, you can watch it for free on Amazon Prime. I would say, like, go back and rewatch it. It's still fun. It's the movie you remember in many respects. But I wouldn't go recommend this to just any rando on the street. There's just no fucking way. As for the score, I'm going to use your scoring system here, but it is 2.5. It really is 2.5. I don't want to say 2 because that sounds too harsh. Because Christian Slater is so charming, and it's a fun film in many respects, but it's got loads of problems. So I'm loath to actually give it a 3. So I'm going to go for 2.5.
This is why sometimes I need to go before you, because.
You're going to say the exact same fucking thing?
The exact same fucking thing. Like,
I'm not surprised.
I wouldn't recommend it to anyone that's never seen it before, because it's not that kind of film. It's you can't take nostalgia away from this film. It's not something you go, you've never seen Gleaming the Cube. You need to sit down and watch Gleaming the Cube. Yeah. As a 40-year-old man, you need to sit down and watch it. And I go, what the fuck have you made me watch?
100%. We'll put it this way. I knew this was one of those films, like so many of these films, when we go back and rewatch them, I get my wife to rewatch them. And the film we'll be talking about in just a moment, the one we're doing next week, I was like, oh yeah, she'd quite enjoy this, and we watched it together. I didn't even consider for a second that she might want to watch Gleaming the Cube with me. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to make her sit through Gleaming the fucking Cube. And it was the right choice.
And in regards to scores, we've made lots of films. I've made lots of random films, 3s and things like that. And it didn't feel like a 3, and I think what lets it down is the writing side of it. So it 100%. It was always going to be a 2.5 for me as well. Yeah.
And I think part of the half, make no mistake, it might be nostalgia, but you can never totally escape it. Like, that
I can't give it a 2. I cannot.
No, I can't give it a 2. I've just got my memories are too fond. It was too an important movie for me growing up, and I still. I think a large part of me enjoying rewatching it was that nostalgia, and I try and remove it. And we've mentioned before, you can't completely remove it. I can't be 100% objective when I go back and watch this film, as hard as I might try. And I think that 0.5 might be, that might be a nostalgia boost.
Yeah,
and the fact that, like, if someone watched this with me today, if I convince somebody who never watched this before to watch it in 2023, they probably would give it 2 stars. And that might be the correct answer.
Yeah,
but I'm giving it 2.5 as well.
The 0.5 for us is a saving grace, I think. It's what's needed for this one. But to be fair, that might be like the Christian Slater effect. I think Christian Slater might nudge this to 2.5. 10, 20 years down the line, I'll probably watch this film again.
I think so. Yeah. I'll certainly have that, like 2034. I'll say, like, fuck, man, I fancy watching, and I'll feel exactly the same way about it. I was like, God, this film was always a bit shit, wasn't it? But I still kind of love it, despite the fact it's a little bit rubbish.
Right. So was that Gleaming the Cube? Are we done?
Yeah, we're done with Gleaming the Cube. So
come on in.
In terms of,
what are we?
It is my choice.
It is your choice for next week. Yeah.
I mean, next week we'll be covering a movie that, honestly, I can't believe that is taking us 124 episodes to finally cover. But next week we'll be looking back at 94's Stargate.
You were asking me like I knew. You didn't tell me.
Yeah. Sorry, mate. I was like 1994's. It's like 1994's what? I think it is 1994. 1994
Stargate is 1994. Yeah.
It's bizarre because it's like, this was a massive hit for Roland Emmerich. It was a massive movie when it was released back in 1994, but it's just kind of been forgotten. Nobody talks about this as being a Roland Emmerich film because everyone just remembers him as the destroying the world guy because of what happened. Independence Day and whatever, 2012 and all those other films he made. But it was like, this was off the back of I think this was his first film after Universal Soldier, and it's one of those great B-movie premises, but given like a huge budget kind of thing.
Yeah.
And as I said, when I was younger, this was a big movie. Everyone I knew watched this film, but I haven't seen it for a long, long time. Like the premise is still fantastic. Like that was a strong part of this film, without question. But is it going to hold up? Nearly 30 years later, as depressing as that sounds, I don't know.
Can I give you a hot take?
Go for it.
Seen it once, don't remember liking it. So.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, I'm not going to turn around and go, but I've seen it once, don't remember liking it, so I've never gone back to watch it. So,
but a long time ago, yeah.
94. I saw it when it first came out.
Oh, fair enough.
Because I went to the cinema.
Be interesting.
Yeah, that's what.
And for those interested, it is on. I think it comes with ads, but you can watch it for free on Amazon at the moment. And if you want to,
it's on that freebie
next week. Yeah.
So in the UK, that is, yeah.
Yeah, and I watched it yesterday, and just be clear, if nothing else, that film still looks amazing. It's a really good looking for, like, you know, we've gone back and watched some of these films and you're like, all right, that looks like an 80s film, this looks like a 90s film. And of course there's always like a computer screen which gives it away the fact that it's in the 90s. But like, whatever you might say about Roland Emmerich, he makes good looking movies, and this is another one of them. But that's all I'll say before we record next week.
If nothing else, we'll need an hour just to discuss Legacy.
Oh, yeah. Jesus Christ. There is a long legacy to this film. But the film itself, it's an interesting one. Is important.
Oh, no, to be fair,
you can make an argument. Its legacy is more important than the film itself in this case.
I remember, like I said, I remember not liking it, so I've never gone back to watch it. But in this landscape, in how we're doing it now, I'm quite looking forward to seeing.
I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
Just the usual. Should we, whilst it's still happening, if you could vote for us on the British Podcasting Listeners' Choice Awards, that's coming to a close soon, I think in September sometime. So you're going to get a couple more of me asking for that. We'll put the links on Facebook, all our social medias. I've been a bit lame doing that lately, but I was on holiday, so I'm taking that as an excuse. But yeah, if you could just vote for us on that, that'd be great. But other than that, thanks for listening.
Cool. Okay, I've been Liam. He's been Rob. You've been listening to the Hey Guys podcast, and see you next week. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Oh, and before we forget, here is Rob with all the finer details. Got to get through those, dude.
Yeah, so basically you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Hey You Guys 80s. We're also on email at heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any recommendations, any corrections or omissions we may have missed from any of the films that we've covered. Just get them in. And also, if you could, please leave us some 5-star reviews. That would really help us. And we'd like to thank, as always, Darry Fletcher at Darry Doodles for the fantastic artwork that we're now producing. Thanks for that, mate.
Cheers, Darry.
Yeah. And thanks again for listening, and we will see you next week.
Cheers. Bye.
Hey, you guys!